Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you are enjoying a beautiful summer day. Today, we have a very special guest. I am so excited to have her on my show because not only is she one of my really good friends, but she is just a total badass rugby player and a total boss ass female first responder. So I would like to introduce Sandra Maris. Sandra is a 28-year veteran with the RCMP, and her current title is a Bloodstain Pattern Analyst. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello. Hey. Thanks for having me, Nikki.
I love having you. I love having you on here.
So I'm a BPA. We'll just shorten that up because it's just way easier than saying Bloodstain Pattern Analyst over and over again. It becomes
a bit of a tongue twister, a BPA. Okay, so I want you to tell me, because I know your journey, and like even still, I still learn things whenever we talk, and I'm like, you did that too? I didn't know that. It's amazing. But I want you to tell our listeners, those amazing women out there that are listening to this podcast, what led you to your current job? What is your journey into this, in this like very 28 years? Like, that's crazy. I mean, it's amazing, but it's also crazy.
Okay, if we want to go all the way back, my journey actually starts when I'm 6 years old, living in Grande Cache, Alberta, November 11th, and I see these amazing red uniforms in front of me. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, what is that? I want to wear that. And I think that's when I looked at my mom and said, I'm going to be a Mountie when I grow up.
Oh, I love it.
They were convinced. They were absolutely convinced I was going to be a nurse. I was going to change my mind. I was going to be a nurse. But as I got older, and one of my coaches in swimming was one of the corporals at Grande Cache Detachment, and I got to see how they work all the time, and they were very involved with the community. The more I wanted to be just like them. So by the time I was about 14 years old, I was just determined to get into the RCMP.
I love that.
So that's really where it actually starts. And then I started picking up more and more books. And I read a book on, actually, it's the very first case where DNA was used. This is where I started getting really nerdy. The very first case in England where DNA was used to solve a crime. And it had never been used prior to this. And I read this book, and I was dumbfounded. I was just in awe. And I'm like, this is it. This is what I need to do. I need to solve crimes or help solve crimes using physical evidence. Of course, I didn't know it was called physical evidence back then, but.
And this is pre-CSI. Miami, CSI, Las Vegas.
I grew up reading Agatha Christie and all these true crime novels, and Rule, Max Haynes.
Yes.
I absorbed everything they ever had to say. So when I graduated from high school here in Edmonton, actually, I set out on essentially a very short journey to get myself in shape and apply to the RCMP. Nice. And so I got my application in when I was 20. So this would have been in 1992. I got my application in, and just the way everything had been working, they were doing hiring freezes at the time. And then when they did start hiring, there were just a lot of different things going on socially within Canada. Mm-hmm. So I got my acceptance in 1994.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was taking a while. There was a long delay there for a lot of recruits going through.
There was. And so I got my acceptance in 1994 and I went to Montreal. They don't do this anymore, but I did my French language training. I did 8 months in Montreal.
Woo!
I know. So according to the government, je suis bilingue.
Yes, look at you. And you're like, but please don't ask me to say anything beyond that.
Be involved in a conversation because it will be French and English back and
Yes, that's amazing. What an opportunity though, right? Like what other job would you get sent somewhere and be trained in the other official language? Like I can't really think of any other jobs, maybe in other countries, but not here where you'd be sent and trained, like not at all.
And what an opportunity for me, a small town Alberta girl, to be sent to Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And you ever go from small town to a city like Montreal, it's almost overwhelming when you first get there. Mind blowing. So I'm this little hick showing up in Montreal, and from Montreal, while I was out there, you know, we got weekends off. We went to Boston, we went to Nova Scotia, we went everywhere, took advantage of it. After 8 months, we then, our troop, because we went there as a troop, we got sent to Regina to the RCMP Training Academy, or formerly known as Depot. Everybody knows it as the RCMP Depot. And we were there for 7 months. Doing our training. We were one of the very first cadet troops. So there was, it used to be recruits that would go through, and then they switched the terminology over to being cadets.
Okay.
So one of the very first cadet troops, and that was by 1995, early 1995.
Nice.
And went through training until we got posted out. I got, my first posting was to Thompson, Manitoba.
Woo! Back to the small town.
Another thing about when we were at Depot, our troop, we were a 50-50 troop, which meant there were 12 men and 12 women in my troop.
Fantastic.
It was an amazing environment. So we had a lot of support. Being a female going through that, it was really good to have all of that support.
I was going to say, because now, like you hear troops where it's maybe 1 or 2 females sometimes in a troop, right? So to have 12 of you to be equal number, equal ratio, that's phenomenal. I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was actually amazing. And I, you know, even after 28 years, I'm very close with some of my troop mates. So
that's awesome. Well, I mean, you put your, blood, sweat, and tears, right? You're going through the worst of the worst together. And there's nothing that forges a bond more than when you're in the pit of life with other people, right? Yeah, totally. Lack of sleep and totally.
Yeah. So we were the very last troop ever issued revolvers.
Oh.
The troop that graduated right behind us was the very first troop ever to be issued with the 9mm handgun that the RC.
Wow, you went to Depot at such a transitional, amazing time. Like I didn't know any of this. Wow, like so many cool things like evolving as you were going through it. And I'm sure like now, if you were to go back and look and see like what you did in Depot compared to what they're doing now, obviously there's going to be changes in the training, but just even in the equipment that you would have been using, in the, the techniques that you were being taught, like all that stuff that's been updated, that is phenomenal. I love it. That's so cool.
We, the changes that I've watched over my career has been, just phenomenal. Really, you think about it. And it's funny when I tell people, I came out of Depot with a revolver and everyone's like, oh my God.
You're like, shush, shush on my age.
Yeah. So then I went up north, basically to Thompson, Manitoba, and absolutely loved it up there. I was up there for 5 years. At the time, it was just the largest cities in Manitoba with only a population of 15,000.
So how many people did you have in your detachment then?
There was about 60 of us.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. That's still quite a big, okay.
It was a bigger detachment. We had 4 watches on the city side, and I was in city, and then we had a GIS section, and we had a rural unit, and our rural unit took care of a very large area outside of Thompson.
Yeah. Your geographical district was probably quite huge.
Oh, it was massive. Yeah. When you think about, there was 60, but it probably was closer to, 40. It was a small little mining town. We didn't really have anything up there. There was no Walmart when I first got up there. There was no McDonald's or anything like that. I mean, now it's it's a much bigger city. It's got McDonald's and Walmarts and big hotels and Boston pizza, but there was none of that when I was up
Good
there.
old Boston pizza. Boston pizza in every small town in Canada.
I loved it. And I'll tell you, I really up until that time, I'd never really snowmobiled. And that was the first time, we snowmobiled to get around the city, to get around town in the winter.
What?
Like you could, yeah.
Oh my God. How cool is that?
But it would drop down to minus 65.
Oh my God. No, say no. No.
So
no. Did you have the bear hats? Like the buffalo hats? Are they the buffalo hats? What am I saying?
They were muskrat
hats. Thank you. I'll go through the list of mammals that live in Canada before I get to the right one.
The actual muskrat anymore, but I still have mine. It is actual muskrat fur. And God. I'll tell you, the warmest hat you will ever wear. And I still am a flaps down girl. So you know how they tie up on the sides?
Yeah.
I flaps down because I'm like, my ears are cold.
Yeah, flaps down 100%. Why would you have them up? Are you kidding me? Although I have a bit of a pea head, so it would probably like be on the top of my eyebrows and my ears would be covered anyway. So
I'll have to bring mine to practice sometime.
Yes. Oh my God, please. I totally want to see it. That's amazing. So Thompson for 5 years. And then from there, where you were just a beat officer, you're getting experience, kind of trying to get your feet wet. Obviously, great training opportunity because small town, large geographical district, but still a crew that you can work with. You're not on your own.
It's a busy detachment. Even now, it's an extremely busy detachment. There's a lot of the social issues that you'd see in larger centers, and obviously being a lot of the people in the more isolated communities that we also serve from up there, we'd be going in there to help with their social issues as well.
Well, and probably not as many resources, right? Not as many resources for help when you're that far north. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is mid 90s. So still, we're still learning at this age at that time, right?
Yeah. We're still learning now, for God's sakes.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Things are constantly evolving. And, so at that time, while I was up in Thompson, I got married. I had my first child.
Yes.
And then I got, I was doing city detachment, and then I went into community relations for a little while I was pregnant. I continued to work. Mm-hmm. And back then, I always love saying that stuff, back then.
Yeah.
I wore a uniform when we were pregnant. So I had this maternity uniform.
Yes.
And it had like the smock pockets.
Yes.
And this tie that stuck straight out. Oh, it was quite, and maternity pants with the yellow stripes.
Yeah. It's funny that you say this because we actually are going to be doing an episode on female uniforms because the absolute atrocities that they put us in as females and count as good. You look fine. Your body is covered. So therefore it's good enough. And you're like, I'm sorry. I still have to be able to complete my duties in this monstrosity that you have me in. What do you want me to do in this? So I'm definitely going to be bringing you on for that episode too, because we need to talk about that.
A lot of changes in uniforms, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it was shortly after that. So my son was born in 99. So it was probably about 2000, 2001 when they realized that putting pregnant females in uniform and having them go out it was an officer safety issue, and stopped creating and issuing those uniforms, which totally made sense.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping in 2001.
That it was about that. You know what? It was still good. I had no problems wearing the uniform. I felt very in my community because I was very connected to the community, and that was that's always been really important to me wherever I went. So in 2000, I transferred to Selkirk, Manitoba. So I went down south. It's just outside of Winnipeg. And I was in the rural unit there. So I did primarily the little towns in and around Selkirk and the different municipalities. And I also did one of the fly-in reserves. So we would fly in for a week and come out for a couple of weeks and then fly back in.
So cool. And so when you were stationed in the reserve town, there was barracks there for you guys, or how did that work? Yeah. Okay.
Had a trailer that we would go in and we'd stay there, and we had our own little trailer detachment. it was really good. And again, you just become part of the community when you're out there, and you feel, you feel like you belong when you're there. And
How many would go with you? Was it just you, or did you like
two of us that would go out?
Okay. Yeah.
And it wasn't like they would say, okay, well, if a female was going, then a male has to go. No. Yeah. There was a few times where it was two females. We would just, get on the plane and fly in, and the community loved it.
Yeah, that's awesome. What an opportunity, right? What other job would you have where they're going to fly you into a remote community and let you basically integrate with the community, be able to be there as a resource, be able to be there as a support for the people that needed you. Like, again, what a cool opportunity. So neat.
It was fantastic. And then I took a transfer to, believe it or not, I went over to Highway Patrol.
Ooh.
And did a couple years almost 2 years on Highway Patrol. So from 2002, I had my second child. And then I took a transfer to Highway Patrol in 2004.
I know. All the years start to blend together, right? And you're like, when was that? I don't know. I can't remember.
Like I'm testifying in court. And then
you are under oath, Miss Maris.
So from 2002, so I was in Highway Patrol till 2006. Nope, that's not right. 2005. I have to think about this really hard, it seems. So till the end of 2005, and then I transferred to Stonewall Detachment.
Okay. And so then Stonewall's where? I should know this geography.
North of Winnipeg.
Okay, so we went from south to north. Highway Patrol, where were you stationed out of? Still out of Selkirk?
Office was still in Selkirk.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you're just patrolling highways basically around Winnipeg.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so now you're above Winnipeg. Now you're north of Winnipeg. Stonewall. Okay.
Selkirk and Stonewall are neighboring communities.
Okay.
Be about, I don't know, in Canadian terms, they're about a half hour apart.
Okay. Oh, cool. Oh, so you didn't have to move or anything then either.
To move. So
awesome.
I went over to Stonewall Detachment, and it was at the time it was a very small detachment. It's a much larger detachment now. I was for a good portion of the time the most senior constable, and quite often put in the second in command position for that, which, it's a lot of responsibility, but
yeah. So how many years did you have in at that point?
12 years.
12 years in. So look at you moving into a supervisor's position after 12 years. Good for you. That's phenomenal. Yeah. Awesome.
Nowadays, because our force is so young, you'll see members with 7 years service in supervisor roles.
Yeah.
Whereas, it seemed when I first got in, senior constables still had like 20 years service.
Yeah.
And the rest, we're getting less and less service being put into these supervisor roles. And I'm not saying they can't do the job. They can definitely do the job. They're doing the job, and they're doing a damn fine job.
Yeah.
But definitely been watching our force get, I guess you could say, younger and younger. Really.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the same with corrections, because I said that too. In, a previous episode, I was talking about my journey and how with 5 years in, it was unheard of to become a supervisor in corrections. Most supervisors had 20 plus years in. So when I was promoted, the shit hit the fan, because how dare this young girl get this supervisor's position after 5 years in? What the fuck does she know? Right. And meanwhile, I was like, the boss told me to put in, like, I didn't think I was going to get it either. Believe me, I'm just as fucking shocked as you are. Right. So, but I feel you, because this is about the same time. Like, I became a supervisor in 2007. So probably right around the same kind of time frame as you're talking, right? Where that was unheard of. That was not a thing. 5 years in you were a rookie. You were still major rookie at 5 years in. Right. So, yeah.
Oh, and then it was at that time that, actually, my then husband had said, if you're really wanting to get into that forensic identification role, the CSI kind of thing, if you want to do it now while the boys are young, while they're small. And so I applied to, it's called IDENT, or forensic identification, in 2006. And I got accepted. I had to write some exams. Then I transferred into Winnipeg Forensic Identification, and I went to the Canadian Police College for a couple months, and I did a 3.5-year apprenticeship to become a forensic identification specialist.
3.5-year apprenticeship. So you're working underneath a mentor, like you're doing courses and then you're kind of going out into the field. Very cool.
All of those things. And you're doing exams. So the first 1.5 years of the apprenticeship for forensic identification, well, it's roughly 1.5 years. It culminates with a qualification board. And so your qualification board, you're presenting an actual case where you've made a criminal identification and you've got your opinion against 3 senior forensic identification specialists. So these are people that know what they're talking about.
Oh, no, not nerve-wracking at all.
You lose a bit of sleep. And then there's a question and answer. So the first 3 or 4 hours in the morning are this question and answer period. And then the afternoon is defending your opinion. And so it's a very, very arduous process, or it feels like it is. And then when it's all over, you're like, that wasn't so bad.
Oh my God. I think I'd be like, I never want to do that again. Why did I choose this tourney? I think I'm going to go back to being the detachment constable, please. Thank you.
The process again has changed over the years. I mean, I've been a forensic identification specialist for 16 years.
Wow.
So the apprenticeship process has changed. The knowledge base is still the same, but the process itself is a little bit different. So I got my first promotion because I became a specialist. So I got my first promotion to corporal in 2010 after completing my apprenticeship. And then I was in Winnipeg, FIS, or Forensic Identification Service, for almost 8 years. And then I transferred to Edmonton.
Came back to your roots.
Came back to my roots. And I was in Edmonton Forensic Identification Services for another 4 years before applying. Oddly enough, going through an apprenticeship just wasn't enough. I needed to go through another understudy program so that I become a Bloodstain Pattern Analyst. And that's what I do now. So I've been doing that for the last 4 years. And I'm at the rank of sergeant.
Yes. Yeah, you are, boss.
And I absolutely love this stuff because, the thing about physical evidence, whether it's fingerprints, footwear, tires, blood, it just is.
Yeah.
There's no feelings or emotions that go with that. It's black and white. It just is.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I think that must take a very logical, analytical mindset to kind of thrive in that position, I would assume, because you're looking at angles, you're looking at, like you said, you've taken all emotion out of it. You're just literally coming in after the fact and being like, what actually happened? Here's the hard evidence. Here's the hard physicality of it. What happened? Let me figure out logically and analytically how that works, right? So, because I think a lot of times people moving into a law enforcement career, they think it's about maybe like that A-type personality, which I think it still is, right? You're an A-type, I'm an A-type, right? But that it's all, it's all people and it's all out there, and you're constantly, and like it really isn't. Like when you look at these multifaceted careers, like already all the different things you've talked about, all the different opportunities that you've had and different things you've done, and that was just as a constable, right? Like that wasn't even moving up, right? That was just as a frontline officer, all these opportunities. Now you've moved into a very specialized area that is really focused on those people who have those logical and analytical minds, who have that math science brain that they can, start to put together the pieces of the puzzle, right? Whereas for me, that is not me in any way, shape, or form. I am all the motions. I'm like let's figure out what happened. Who was mad at who? Let me see here, right?
Happened over here because there's no way that this could appear the way it did if it didn't happen.
Yes. Yes.
You were talking about math and physics, and that's part of our understudy for Bloodstain Pattern Analysis. Is I had to take a math and physics course again, and it was quite funny because I took all the pre-course material. It took me about 3 or 4 weeks to complete. And it was all quadratic equations and trigonometry. And I was just, I hadn't done math for 30 years.
That's tough. Did you call your sons and be like, can you walk me through this, please? I know you're learning this right now.
Pretty much. I'm like, oh my goodness.
That's so funny. That is so funny. So you said you left Winnipeg and you came to Edmonton. What was the catalyst for moving from Winnipeg to Edmonton? Was there just a different opportunity here?
There was, I had been approached by the officer in charge of forensic identification for Alberta and said, I hear you're from Edmonton and I was wondering if you're interested in coming back. And I said, well, I am. I was looking at, well, a few things. And, I was advancing in service and this is where I was hoping to be able to retire. So for me, this was my retirement move, as I said.
Yeah.
There was a few different factors. I had unfortunately divorced from my first husband. We are good friends, amazing co-parents.
That's awesome.
And I thought that my career would be better. I would be able to better serve people in Alberta. And I was actually able to bring my oldest son with me so he could advance his hockey career here, maybe play at higher levels while he was here. And of course, we all know how that's progressed.
Yes, her son is a boss ass hockey player. I won't say his name, but he is amazing and he is killing it at life. We are so proud of him. He's doing amazing. So, and your younger son is just as athletically gifted. It's insane.
Yeah, I don't know how I lucked out with those two. But so I wound up coming to Edmonton. And my boyfriend at the time was here. We were doing that long distance relationship thing and took the transfer here. So that would have been in 2014. And then in 2018 is when I got my promotion to Bloodstain Pattern Analysis. Yeah.
And so what was the training involved in that? You said the understudy, the case, did you have to do another case plan
another board where I have to defend my opinions against senior analysts?
And so did the cases get harder as you move up? Is it because this could be potentially a lateral transfer?
Well, no, this isn't a lateral transfer because it was a promotion.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So I wouldn't say that the cases get harder. I mean, we're still talking about homicides. And for me to attend something, there has to be a significant bloodletting.
Okay.
Where I can actually provide an opinion of some kind. I wouldn't say that they get harder. I would say that my role is much more technical now. I'm not just looking for fingerprints or footwear or anything. I'm not trying to say necessarily who was in the room, but I am trying to say, where did those people move? Where did the bloodletting occur? Mathematically, I can bring that out into a 3D realm. So if there was, say, blunt force used to inflict a wound, and then it created what we call an impact pattern, I can actually, using trigonometry, find the angles of impact for each of the individual stains. And then we use a computer program, but I can also use strings, and we can actually string it out. And so there will be like an area of origin, which is your 3D area of where that bloodletting would have occurred, or the force would have been applied to create that. And that's where, usually you would say, well, that's where the incident occurred, is in that general area.
Right. So then from there, did you think that, so obviously the person must have come in from this door because the body wouldn't be able to be at this angle, or
like I may not be able to go that far, but when we have somebody say, well, he was standing and he came at me, but the impact pattern is closer to the ground. And when I do my triangulations, they're, maybe 30 centimeters off the ground. Well, that's definitely not standing. Mm-hmm. So I may be able to corroborate or refute statements provided by the accused or witnesses.
Right. And so then from that, obviously, like you said, normally you're dealing with homicides. What follow-up comes from something like that? I'm assuming mounds of paperwork you probably have to do, but what is there, and photography, all that kind of work. Is there anything once you get back to your office that you're then working on when you leave the scene, or is it mostly on scene, spending as much time as you need to there, getting as much detail and knowledge from the scene as you possibly can before you leave?
Yeah, I find that our job is more front end loaded. We spend more time at the scene trying to capture as much as we can. Then when we get back to the office, we can start writing the report, but we really can't author any opinions until we know whose DNA we're actually looking at. So the DNA swabs are submitted by investigators into the lab system. And once we get the lab reports, then we can look at authoring some kind of an opinion, because we don't know whose actual blood that is. That could be somebody else's. And I've had that in cases where, the assumption is that we're looking at all victim blood. And then, when I've got my DNA results, I'm like, well, none of this is victim blood. The accused bled everywhere.
Very interesting. And so then the DNA results, are we still looking at weeks for DNA? Are we looking at?
There was a slowdown over COVID.
Yeah.
COVID period, I guess we will refer to it as, but they're definitely picking that speed back up. So it's usually within 45 days it depends on when the swabs are submitted. And
And then how closely are you working with, I'm assuming it's detectives that are coming in that are doing the investigation? Like, are you guys back and forth regularly? Are you just kind of creating your reports and sending them off? Like, this is from this case, here you go, use what you wish from it?
So there is communication between us, and I'll say, usually it's when is the report going to be done? And I usually come back, look at the report when I'm done.
Yeah.
But
but when I'm done with it.
But there's exhibits that have to be examined. And a lot of times we're doing consultation. Like, what do you think? Like, we get a lot of that. Like, what do you think? Do you think this is worth looking at? Do you think this is something? And so there's a lot of communication between the investigators and our unit just based on that. If somebody's come into contact with blood, what is the probative value of that? Well, it depends on the whole context and what we're looking at. So there's generally a lot of conversation regarding what will have the more probative value for an exhibit. And then we might we'll do an exhibit examination and submit those as well to the lab. And then usually we just do the follow-ups for court and waiting for court after that.
And then testifying. I'm assuming you guys are getting called fairly regularly.
Yeah, it's hit and miss. Like, sometimes we'll get called to testify, and then sometimes we just don't.
Sometimes we're like, this report was so well written that it just tells us exactly what we need to know.
Or there's really not a lot that this report adds to the case itself. And I think, right. And that's to the Crown attorneys or the defense attorneys, whether or not they really want the bloodstain analysts or the forensic identification members. Like, they just, bringing in experts sometimes isn't always necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then what do you think, or do you think, because this is kind of a multifaceted question, is there a skill set that as a female, you feel that we bring to this specific position, or like throughout your career? Is there something that because you were a female, you feel it was an advantage in what you were doing, or was it a disadvantage? Was there something along the way that you were like, as a female, this was actually tougher, or as a female, I found that, this was more challenging?
Me personally, I've never done or said to myself, because I'm a female, this is harder. I've always just, if you can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
I found, and this is just me, and I'm definitely not taking anything away from my male counterparts, but earlier in my service, I really did find that my mothering instincts or my compassion for the youth was a huge benefit. Like, because I sit and talk to these youth in need, and they would talk to me. I think that there's a lot of men out there that can relate, and with a lot of the youth as well. But I just found, I remember one time this one troubled youth, we were booking her in cells. She was drunk, and she was unfortunately one of our regulars, and she would have been about 13, 14 years old. And, this one time she was getting released, and she saw me in the back. I was doing some paperwork for somebody I had just brought in, and she looked over at me, and she walked up towards me, and I kind of turned and looked at her, and, here I am in all my uniform and everything. And she just put her arms around me and gave me this big hug. So I just hugged her back, and all she wanted was that.
Yeah.
And so I think that is what women bring, is passion, that, that. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen for the men, because I've actually seen it, but that's what I felt, that I brought that to the table a lot more.
Yeah. within your specific role now, do you feel like there's anything that like, I always think like, as much as men and women are alike, and I agree with you, whatever they can do, we can do, and whatever we can do, they can do, but with the obvious exception of having babies. Like, is there something in our brains? I do feel like women and men have different brains. We have different ways that we look at things.
I think we do. I think to a degree that we do. I think once you get into certain positions, we're all of the same type of personality. Like in identification, we all have that same mentality.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly how we process things.
Yeah.
But I do find, and I think this is something that's been brought up in the past with other police forces as well, is that since the CSI effect came into play back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was an increase of female applicants into the forensic identification services.
Right.
Because when you watch those shows, that's who's doing the job. I think that really had a very strong impact in what we're seeing now with the number of female forensic identification officers.
Yes. Well, and I love, like I said, I love the fact that, I think a lot of people would think of RCMP and what they think of is highway patrol, the RCMP that you see in the communities, the RCMP that you see, driving in the small towns. They don't think that there's blood spatter analysts, which, like they don't think that there's, I'm assuming people know that there's identification techs and things like that are going to be coming. But like, it's not, when you see the uniform and you see red serge and you see yellow pants, right? That's not what you're thinking. You're not thinking that these people are in there, right? And that brain type, that those people excel in that style of a career or that side of it. And I love the fact that you're bringing it kind of to light, because I think that there probably is a ton of women out there with that brain, with that same logical, analytical thinking that are like, oh, I didn't even know that I could do that within this career. And wow, I can totally do that. And I'm going to try. Right. So that's amazing to me. I love that. Okay. So in the position you're in right now, obviously continually learning, continually changing different technologies. So how do you continue to learn to kind of stay on top of things in your role, or, new technologies are coming through? Like how are you doing that?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a member of the International Association for Bloodstain Pattern Analysis, or Analysts. And what that is a, basically it's an international group, and it really is, there's bloodstain analysts all over the world. And we're not all police officers, and we share information and technologies. And there's a lot of scientists that are working in the background, and they're coming up with different search techniques using light, and they're experimenting with different software programs to assist in looking at cast off patterns and all sorts of different, like there's just constant. So we're always getting information and updates and articles and scientific research that's being done. There are so many forensic identification programs or forensic science programs in the universities now, because it's such a popular field. A lot of research is being done at the university levels all over the world.
So fascinating. It's like this whole entire side of law enforcement that my mind is blown right now. I'm like, there is like a society of these people, like, and then I'm like, my brain is going and I'm thinking like, if you were a female scientist and you didn't really want to go and do like the law enforcement side of things, you could still be involved in this, because you could still be researching light patterns, and like, wow, it's amazing. Like
there's so many people involved behind that do the research, whether it's in fabrics or fluid dynamics, because basically for me, when I look at blood, and blood is essentially, when we're looking at bloodstain pattern analysis and we talk about physics, we're looking at the science of ballistics or objects in motion, right? And then we start talking about the fact that an object in motion stays in motion until it's overcome by air resistance and gravity, and that's what happens with
Newton's law.
And we start going through all of that, right? And so we start talking about fluid dynamics and how blood is moving, and I always laugh now when I see cartoons and it's raining, and it's got that raindrop and the point is upwards. Well, that's the wrong, because of viscosity.
What?
Because viscosity and and surface tension of blood, where blood wants to pull everything into, or the molecules want to pull everything as tight as possible. They're so attracted to each other. They pull everything into the tightest, smallest known surface area, which is a sphere. So when rain is actually falling, it's just this perfect sphere. What happens is as it strikes the surface, there's this, it's called like a wave cast off. And so the blood comes up, or whether it's ink or water, it will come off and it still wants to stay together. So it keeps trying to pull itself back in together. So if it's moving in a direction, it continues to get smaller and you get this tail that shows directionality.
Oh my God. You have literally blown my mind right now. Like, I am just like, I had no freaking clue that.
I'm a dumb prop rugby player, but hey.
I would never think that about you ever, because I know you, but like, I love, you know what I love also, because I know you so well, is hearing you go nerdy and start getting, because I'm just like, I can see the like excitement in your face, and I can hear you just being like, and then it stays together, and then there's molecules, and I'm like, I'm just fascinated by the fact that rain is not in a teardrop shape. What the fuck? How come nobody told me this my entire goddamn life? I learned this today. Wow. So listeners, if you have learned one thing today out of this amazing podcast, you have learned that rain is not a raindrop. It's not. It's a sphere. Like, it's insane. Oh my God. I love it. I love it. That is so cool. Okay. I know that we're running out of time, so I want to ask you this one. I've got a couple rapid fires to give you at the end, but I really want to kind of touch on this one. What is the biggest kind of surprise you've had in your career in the last kind of few months or few years moving into this new position? Is there something that you just didn't know? Like the fact that rain is not a raindrop. I'm sure you knew that, but like, is there something that's just blown your mind moving into this position or doing the work that you're doing?
I'm one of those people that just, you know what, nothing will catch me completely off guard when it comes to this, because I have such an open mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. See, that's all. And I'm assuming like your natural curiosity, and like you're saying, you're liaising with these other people, you're learning new things, right? It's just like, oh, okay, logically that makes sense. And combined with all your years experience and all the things that you've gained yourself, to just be like, oh yeah, that I would assume that would happen when this happens to it. So that's super cool. Okay, so let's hit rapid fire. I have some fun ones for you. So these will be quick, like one wordies, maybe a little bit longer for some of them, but what is your favorite food or snack when you are working or on shift?
Burgers.
Burgers. I love it, because you can eat it with one hand in a wrapper while driving a car, right?
Favorite food group. Okay.
Favorite food group. Yes. We'll make our own, like, what is that? Canadian food guide. Burgers will be one. Yep. Okay. I like it. What is the coolest location that you have ever worked or ever gone on a call to?
Oh boy. I don't know. I've been all over the place.
I was going to say, you've traveled extensively.
Travel a lot. You know what? I went to St. John's, Newfoundland on course, and we were there for a week doing some training, and that place just blew my mind. I just absolutely loved it.
That's so wicked. That's on my bucket list. I got to hit that East Coast at some point, because I feel like you and I feel like we would vibe out there. Those would be our people, right?
Oh yeah. We went to this one bar. I know we are pressing for time here, but we went to this one bar, and it was a Thursday night, and there was no cover charge, and the place was packed, and it was hopping, and it was wonderful and so friendly and welcoming. And I'm like, this music is amazing. It's very East Coast music. And I look up, and it's the Irish Descendants.
What?
And I'm like, what? There was no cover charge.
We just got to walk in here. What is happening? Oh, I love it. See, amazing, right? I'm telling you, the East Coasters, they know how to party. Okay. What is the coolest piece of equipment that you get to use, or like your favorite piece of equipment?
My absolute favorite thing to use, actually, I love using blood enhancers, like when there's some sort of friction ridge detail or footwear impression or something like that. So I love Amido Black, and it's a dye stain, and it dyes, and it's I just love using it because when you see it pop, or even with ALCV, it's another chemical that we use that, and when you see the detail all of a sudden just pop out, you're like, oh my God.
You're like, I can see it now. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's a really, well, I mean, and like talk about making your job a little bit easier when you can actually see all the details of the things you need to see. Okay, awesome. One last one. What is your piece of advice for somebody that would be just getting into this career? That can either be into the RCMP in general or into identification. What would be the piece of advice you would give?
My biggest piece of advice is find yourself a therapist. Mental health is probably one of my biggest things. I will advocate and advocate and advocate. Look after yourself mentally, and get out there right away, and don't think, oh, I'll wait until the trauma starts. The trauma is already, you're in a heightened awareness all the time. You're not surrounded by wonderful people, whether it's in corrections or, you're arresting a bad guy. We're dealing with, not the greatest things in humanity, and we have to wrap our heads around that. Yes. So it's perfectly normal, and we should be able to just start, hey, you know what? I'm a police officer, or I'm in corrections, or I'm a by law enforcement. It doesn't matter. This is, I'm getting yelled at. I'm being told I'm a pig. I'm being told I'm a horrible person. I'm being spat at. I'm being, I have a fear of being punched constantly. Yep. Tell somebody, talk about it. Don't just start pushing it down and letting it build.
And thinking it's normal. Yeah, I love it. I think, you know what, and that's something I love that you touched on it. We didn't even get into the mental side of stuff with this chat. And believe me, I will be having Sandra back on this show multiple times, because I have so many other things I want to talk to you about, and so many other topics I want to touch base with you. But yeah, that's one thing I completely agree. We go into this career, and I'm sure same thing with you, right? When you saw that red surge when you were 6, I want to do that. I want to help people. Right? I want to help people. And then you get into the career and you realize that you're helping. There's a lot of people that don't want to be helped. There's a lot of people that hate you for trying to help them. There's a lot of people that want to kill you for trying to help them. And the things you're going to see, and the things that people are going to say to you, and the threats you're going to take daily, not just to yourself, but to your family, to your kids, to your loved ones. And it's just normal. We go home and we're like, yeah, nothing really happened today. But if you were to tell that to somebody that didn't work in law enforcement, and you were to tell them the things that people said to you, they would look at you like, I'm sorry, what? That's a normal day? And you're like, yeah, like there wasn't really anything of note today. Like nobody died. There was no horrible accidents. There was nobody punched me. Nobody spit on me. Like, say today was a pretty good day, right? But to the rest of the world, for somebody to get in their face and call them a fucking pig and tell them that they're a piece of shit, that doesn't happen to people when they go to work in their offices, right? So it's a shocking thing. And we normalize it. And we normalize it to the point where, like you said, the cup builds and builds and builds, and then the cup becomes overflowing, and we haven't talked to anybody about it. Whereas if we'd have talked to somebody when the cup was starting to fill, it wouldn't, it hopefully would never overflow, because we would be able to talk to somebody and empty the cup, talk to somebody and empty the cup, talk to somebody and empty the cup, right? So I love it. That's a top-notch piece of advice. It has been so fun. This time has flown by. Like I said, I could talk to you 4 hours about everything, life, rugby, work. So thank you so much for giving up your time today. I know this was supposed to be your day off, and I love you so much for sharing your time with me. Like I said, you will be back. We will have Sandra back. If listeners have questions, if you guys are looking for more information on the role that she plays, we will put some information in the show notes. You guys will be able to reach out to myself, and I can put you in contact or give you the resources that you're looking for. But I think today was amazing. Sandra, I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any parting words to our listeners before you sign off?
If you're interested in a career in law enforcement, we're all on the same family. It doesn't really matter what force you decide to apply for or what job. We're all doing the same job. But I will have to say that the RCMP, when they say that it's a career nowhere near ordinary, they're absolutely right. I've seen this whole country, and thanks to the RCMP. So that's my little plug for them.
I love it. That's good. That's good. That's so good. All right. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Listeners, join us again for our next episode. Can't wait to share some more badass women and their amazing stories.
Well, that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening, tuning in, and sharing your time and energy with us. Make sure you check out our next episode starring another badass female first responder on Apple, Spotify, or TuneIn. And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Line Fitness Testing. Stay safe and keep your head on a swivel.